Hey everyone, my name is Mike Keighley. I'm a 500-hour yoga teacher with MaineGeneral. I teach through the Peter Alfond Prevention and Healthy Living Center. I also run an LLC here in Augusta teaching yoga called Archangel Yoga and teach out of the Travis Mills Foundation for Recalibrated Warriors. So with COVID, it's kind of put a damper on our ability to go out and maybe take care of some wellness, going to classes, being physically active, and just doing things to help kind of treat ourselves other than guilty of this, maybe eating too much and binge watching too much Netflix. So we're gonna offer you a series of videos, and so doing some breath work. And so it may sound kind of ridiculous because you're like, breathing, like I breathe every day. I don't really need a class to tell me how to breathe. And I was of that same mindset as well. And then kind of once I started diving into yoga, the breath was actually like the biggest thing that impacted me. And so as somebody that has dealt with some anxiety, some depression, stuff like that, the breath I have found, having a consistent practice and integrating that into my life has been like just a total game changer for me in terms of my wellness, my happiness, my ability to kind of check in on my emotions and how I'm feeling for each individual day. So yeah, I teach a class here. It's a guided deep breathing class. And so throughout this series of videos, we're going to go through some of these breathing techniques. This one will likely be the longest one. And that's because we're going to talk a little bit about why how we breathe is important. Because like I said, otherwise you're probably just like, hey, I breathe every day. Like, you don't need to tell me how to breathe. I got this. So looking at how we breathe and why that's important. And so a big thing with these breathing techniques that we're going to go through is looking at our autonomic nervous system. And so that's kind of a fancy word. You probably are more familiar with the term fight or flight. And so that's part of our autonomic nervous system. And so the other kind of counter to fight or flight is rest and digest. And so that's sympathetic and parasympathetic is how we break those down if you want to get science with it. So our fight or flight, that's kind of that anxiety. We tighten up, our breath tends to go to our chest, and we're just really contracting in. A lot of our blood goes out to our muscles. We maybe even curl in like this, our shoulders, our chest, in those areas. And so there's really not an opportunity for our breath to breathe deeply. And so it's pretty interesting because, in addition to there being like an outside stimulus that can cause that, where our breath is part of that reaction, in addition, depending on how we breathe, that can also send that signal to our brain to, cause us to kind of engage that mode. And so for a lot of us, if we are constantly stressed out, and that's with COVID, I mean, it's totally understandable. I think a lot of us are. Sometimes we have a tendency where maybe we're slouching, so maybe we're at a computer all day, maybe we're on our cell phones all day, or driving, any number of things where we have a tendency to kind of curl in like this. And so that really causes, there's really nowhere for our breath to go except for in our chest, our upper chest area. And so that's kind of continuing to send that brain, it's almost like send that signal to our brain. It's kind of like a cycle of just, hey, you need to be hypervigilant, you need to be super alert, you need to be, amped up and worked up. It doesn't give us an opportunity to really relax. We'll show kind of ways we can sit, and then also go through some of these techniques to really start to engage that rest and digest mode within our body. And so we kind of already touched on this, but just looking at efficient and inefficient breathing. And so with inefficient breathing, kind of like I showed earlier, like our posture tends to be somewhat slouched, and so maybe more from the side that may help. So we're kind of in like this. Again, nowhere for like our breath to really go. And that tends to weaken our breathing muscles. And so when we look at our breathing muscles, talking about, like our diaphragm, which is kind of like this thing that goes up and down. It's like a pump. And so that allows, either pulls on our lungs to create this negative pressure to take in air, or it's pushing up to push the air out on the exhales. But so if we don't use that muscle, it weakens over time. And so the other thing is, again, big thing on posture, if we're breathing to our chest, it's like we're just constantly have our foot on a gas pedal. We're never really hitting a brake. And then looking at more efficient type breathing, so it would be more upright. So maybe scooting away from the back of our chair instead of like this. So when we scoot away, You know, you can kind of with our pelvis get a little bit of rotation in our pelvis, gets our spine up nice and tall. Also breathing through our nose. Sounds silly, but you know, our nose was put here to breathe through. We can breathe through our mouth, but our nose is really, that's its primary purpose. And so there's several things when you look at the nose, you can kind of identify that. You know, like we have kind of that mucus in there, so that helps to moisten the air, it humidifies it as it comes in. We have the hairs in our nose to help filter out kind of any particles like that. And it also helps to kind of slow down our breathing, so we're not hyperventilating by like that. And so yeah, the other thing to look at too is there's actually 4 parts of our breath. And so you probably, if you pay attention and slow down with your breath, you'll notice that there's an inhale. You tend to pause at the top of your breath. There's an exhale, and then you tend to pause at the bottom of your breath. So being aware of those kind of 4 different parts of our breath. And so looking at the benefits of breathing, you know, one I've noticed in particular with a family member of mine is lower blood pressure. As they were recommended to be put on medication for their high blood pressure, and you know, did 10 to 15 minutes of breathing per day and actually managed to get their blood pressure to lower as a result of that, which is pretty cool. For me personally, things I've noticed: reduction in anxiety, depression, being able to, you know, kind of regulate my ability to respond to situations that may get me anxious, angry, worked up. You know, instead of reacting, it's, you know, a lot more of a response where I can delay and, you know, come up with an appropriate response that, you know, I'm not going to be regretting later. So, reduction in insomnia, another one that like totally hits home with me. I'm able to sleep so much better when I have a regular breathing practice. And also reduction in chronic pain, which I know, again, it may sound silly, but you think about it, if you're breathing improperly and you're using all these different muscles that aren't really meant to be used, and especially like instead of breathing to our belly, sometimes we have a tendency when somebody says take a deep breath, and test this out, you know, if I say take a deep breath, a lot of us, myself included sometimes, you know, I'll inhale and my shoulders are coming up to my ears. And so how many of us out there have chronic pain in our shoulders, our neck? Because if you think about it, if we're breathing, you know, I don't know how many times per day, and we're just using those muscles and they're constantly tense as a result of our breathing, because we're not breathing to our belly, then yeah, they're probably going to be sore, they're going to be tight. So, getting into, you know, I guess the more direct level of what we're going to be doing. So kind of setting the stage. So first thing is like what we're wearing. And so you probably want to avoid wearing any like super tight clothing when we're doing these practices. And so like for me, even before starting to do this, you know, I just got off work here at MaineGeneral, and so I'm wearing a tie, and so this was, you know, up nice and tight. I had this top button, but that's going to impact potentially, you know, my breathing and my talking. And so loosening that up, finding a comfortable, quiet space. I realize that may not be possible for all of us. So maybe it's 5 minutes before you get out of the car when you come home from work. If you know, are leaving to go off site, you know, it's just finding those 5 minutes or just a few minutes where you can, you know, have some time to yourself. So we can also be seated, kneeling, or reclined. A lot of times reclined can be a lot more comfortable. That way we're taking some of that pressure off of our back. Kneeling, you know, sometimes it works if you put something underneath your sit bone, just kind of prop yourself up. Really depends on flexibility. It depends on our body. Everybody's different. And so if we're seated, which is how I'm going to be, if you're reclined, you know, you may want to throw like a pillow underneath your knees, take some pressure off your lower back. But so if we're seated, we want our feet flat on the floor. If they don't reach the floor, then maybe find some really tall books, some yoga blocks, just something where you can get your feet flat. You want your knees at about 90 degrees. And so then from there, like I said, probably try, if we can, maybe scoot away from the back of our chair. If we are using the back of our chair, that's okay too. Just try to avoid the slouch, because a lot of times that's what happens. So kind of allows us to get up nice and tall here. And so then from there, really almost imagine like you have like a string coming out of the top of your head, so we're up nice and tall, so our head's not down like this, because as you can imagine, if I'm trying to breathe and I'm kind of like cutting this off right here, it may not work out so hot. So up nice and tall. And with our eyes, we can either find like a soft gaze towards the wall in front of us, or feel free to, close our eyes if we're comfortable doing that. And so then from there, once our eyes are closed, we've kind of got everything in alignment, we're up nice and tall, we've created some room for that breath. We can use our diaphragm. Then from there, feel free, as we close our eyes, just kind of soften some of these sensing muscles and also places where we store a lot of tension. And so maybe our jaw, like I grind my teeth when I sleep, so I clench. So focus on just trying to soften those areas. Maybe even focus on softening your ears. And maybe our eyes, our eyebrow. Just trying to let go of any tension that may be there. And so if I'm teaching yoga, a lot of times I'll say, on our inhales, just try to observe. Notice maybe where we're tight. And then like with our exhales, it's like we're just letting go of that tension that may be in those spaces. And so just trying to soften our face. Just let go of any kind of tension, maybe in our shoulders. And so, now that we'll walk through getting into our posture again. But from here, we're going to go into a couple of different exercises. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to do some ocean breath, and then we're going to do just some diaphragmatic belly breathing. And then we'll wrap it up for this video. But so let's go ahead, take some time, get comfortable. That's one of the biggest things. A lot of times people feel like, well, he's seated, so I need to be seated and upright, and we need to be, our chest needs to be out to make all this room for our breath, but then we're like tightening our back and our shoulders and everything's tense, and we can do that for maybe like 30 seconds, and then we're just like, this is like really uncomfortable. I don't want to do this anymore. So if you need to lay down, totally okay. If you, want to use the back of your chair, use the back of your chair. We just really want to try and, keep our spine straight. But so go ahead, just finding our pose, our position, just whatever's comfortable for us, whatever works for our body. Just get comfortable. And then go ahead, we're just going to soften our eyes or close our eyes. If we're seated, maybe hands are on our lap. And so just whatever a deep breath feels like to you, just taking a couple of those to begin with. We're just trying to kind of, again, set that stage. Let things kind of soften. Our jaw, eyebrow, maybe our shoulders. So then from here, we're going to go ahead and just gently open our eyes. So setting up for our ocean breath, what we're going to do, if there's people around, you're going to look a little bit silly. That's okay, I promise. So what we're going to do is, we want to take our hand, and so we're just going to put it in front of our face. And so we're just going to pretend that that's like a mirror, or like, maybe when you were a kid, in your parents' car, you wanted to fog up the window, and then you wanted to write all kind of messages. So we're just going to take our hand, put it in front of our face. And so then pretend this is that glass, that mirror. And so using our mouth, pretend we're just going to try and fog it. And so notice, do this a couple times. You don't have to do it fast or anything like that. Notice how you're making that constriction, that. And so keep doing it. Pay attention kind of at the base of your throat right here. How we're kind of constricting that space, and that's what's allowing us to make that. And so from here, you can keep doing that while I talk, or feel free to stop. So what we're going to do from here is we're going to close our mouth. You can keep your hand up if you want, if that helps. But we're going to close our mouth, and we're going to do that same breathing, but we're going to do it through our nose. So we're still keeping that same constriction right here. We're still trying to fog the mirror. And so as we breathe, we're just directing our breath in through our nose, down to our belly. As our belly fills, our chest just moves on up. And then as we exhale, really noticing that constriction as our breath leaves from our upper collarbones, and then down to our ribs, and then down to our belly. And so, go ahead and give that a try. So I'll demo it as well. And if you need to blow your nose before you get going, maybe a good idea. So go ahead and we're just so feel free to keep doing that. So to really bring home kind of the point behind the name Ocean Breath, feel free from here, you can take both hands, plug our ears, and maybe do it a couple more times. So obviously I'm not going to be able to hear you, but feel free to, tell me what that sounds like, because it probably sounds like the ocean. So that's where that name comes from. And if it doesn't, feel free to leave a comment, ask a question, we'll get through it. So that's the first breathing technique we're going to do. And so we're just going to do like 2 minutes of that. And so getting back into our comfortable seated posture, reclined. You could even probably do it standing if you wanted to, kneeling, just, wherever you're at, whatever you're feeling today, all good. And so spine is straight. Open that chest up. If we're seated, maybe hands down on our thighs. Feet are flat. Soften our neck, our eyebrows. Maybe wiggle our jaw. Feel free to rest our eyes. And so then just taking a couple minutes here. And so also just notice how you feel right now. And then maybe notice how you feel at the end. You may feel different, you may not. But just notice. So going ahead, just getting started, just breathing in through our nose. Taking a couple minutes here. go ahead and just kind of start to wiggle our fingers, our toes. And feel free to open our eyes whenever we're ready. Cool. Congratulations, first breathing exercise done. Hopefully it worked out. And so this next one will be very similar, except I just recommend, you can either keep the constriction or you can lose that, lose that ocean part of it. But we're just gonna be breathing in and out through our nose. And we really wanna focus on our diaphragm and our belly. And so this is one where we're laying down may really help, especially then because we can put like one hand on our belly and like one over our chest or our heart. And that way we can really feel that physical sensation of our body breathing. And so we can do that seated as well. Feel free to have one hand on our belly, one over our chest. And then just breathing in and out through our nose. We're just going to direct again that breath to our belly first. Really try to expand our belly out, And then like a wave, feeling our breath move up, feeling our chest expand, feeling that breath up to our collarbones. That natural pause. And then as we exhale, that breath leaving contraction in our chest, belly button in towards our spine. So go ahead, be comfortable. Feel free to rest our eyes. Maybe place like one hand on our belly, one on our chest. So just taking about 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes here. And just breathing to our belly again, just viewing it kind of like a wave. Or sometimes it helps, think of like our belly or our body is like a pitcher of water, or like a glass that's being filled by a pitcher. So we're just pouring from our pitcher. Our belly is the bottom of that glass, so we're just filling up the bottom of that glass first as we inhale. The glass fills even more. Feel our ribs expand. And then filling that glass all the way to the top, to our collarbones. And as we exhale, just the reverse. Just pouring that glass out. Feeling that breath leave from our upper chest. Our ribs contract. And then just emptying that glass as our belly button comes in towards our spine. Just wiggle our toes, our fingers. Feel free to gently open our eyes, blink our eyes open whenever we're ready. And so those are the 2 breathing techniques we're going to cover today. So moving forward, we'll have other videos where we'll show some other breathing techniques as well. So like I said, if you guys have any questions, comments, feel free to leave those. If you're questioning whether a breathing practice is right for you, definitely recommend talking to your doctor before diving too deep into this stuff. But thank you guys. Really appreciate you guys watching. Yeah, see you guys next time. Thank you.